Hello and welcome to another episode of the Socially Numb Podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahy. Well, the holiday season is finally upon us. I know we talked about Black Friday and shopping deals, and I'm going to go ahead and start off and just say that I'm very disappointed with some of the extra deals in shopping they're trying to emphasize this year. They went from the Black Friday to moving it on to Thanksgiving, which I thought was absurd. But then again, I went out, got a 3DS. I told that story previously. Now, they went and took Cyber Monday. Some chains, I don't know, I can't remember which stores, but some of them jumped that gun and went ahead and moved it to Sunday. So they took the Cyber Monday. They wanted to get their deals out there first, get the customers to go ahead and shop at their stores. So they took that, put the deals online, and you could go ahead and shop ahead of time. And now I keep getting alerts on my phone for other Black Friday deals, emails that I don't remember signing up for, pop-up alerts from some of the shopping apps and things like that. And these effectively turned Cyber Monday into Cyber Week. I saw a couple, I don't remember, it might have been Walmart, might have been Amazon, where the deals from Cyber Monday now stretch the whole week. And I just don't get it. It's tough enough trying to sort through all the garbage out there. If you have a family, now my daughter's quite young, so I really don't have to worry about her finding these fads and people buying different things. I know when I was out on Black Friday or Thanksgiving shopping to get the 3DS, I had some guy come up and he was looking for some other deal. He said for his kids, some hip toy, which I wasn't aware of. I know I talked about the Hatchimals before, and I still haven't seen one of those in stores, so I guess they're all sold out, but I haven't even had anyone come up and talk to me about it. So no one has ever tried to tell me this season, my friend circle wise anyway, or even online, that that's a great killer deal. So I don't know where that came from. Even toy wise, like no one's ever said like, hey, have you ever heard of these? No one has ever asked me that. But apparently that's a thing, and Cyber Week, that's killer, because I don't understand how some people can go out and go shopping crazy. And I started to look, trying to find some other tech deals, tech news, and everything's a wash now with it so close to like Christmas. No new gadgets out there that I feel must have. Most of the displays are the same old from the past couple years. You have the drones, some smart watches, which I wear a Pebble watch. I found out that works well for me. And when I bought the Pebble Steel because I had a few of coins or credits or whatever they were for Best Buy. And so like theirs used to run out at the end of the year. This is a few years ago, I believe. So like you had so many credits and I didn't know what else to get. So I was like, I had enough to get a Pebble watch. So I went ahead and took a gamble on it. And it's been a lifesaver because with the smartwatch, and this is before the Apple Watch even came out. So it was before the Apple Watch was on the market. I got a Pebble watch because it was one of those deals for Christmas where I thought, hey, I need something. I have these for Best Buy games. I wasn't really buying any video games at that time because my back catalog's still pretty full. But I went ahead and got the watch. Wasn't sure if I would use it, how I would like it, but it's been pretty cool. So if you look at the Apple Watch or any smartwatch, I recommend the Pebble. It works for both Android and iPhone, which was one of the selling points for me. And well, the Apple Watch wasn't even out at the time that I bought it, but I was looking for a gadget for Christmas. I got it for myself, but it's pretty cool. I do like I get notifications, which is helpful for like email, and because sometimes your phone's in your pocket, you feel it vibrate, and you don't know, like you pull it out thinking you might get a text from someone, and boom, disappointment, just an email. And I can only imagine how many ad emails I got. Where my phone, I would have had to be pulling it out of my pocket constantly. Now I just glanced down at my watch, dismiss it, don't really care. The watch did stop working for me. One of the buttons jammed, and they told me to clean it and all this other stuff. They told me how, and it still wouldn't work. And I sent them a video of the watch not working, and they went ahead and sent me a whole new Pebble watch for free. So I highly recommend them as a company. And I think they might have been a Kickstarter at first. I definitely didn't get it Kickstarter. I know I got it at Best Buy with their reward points or whatever they have. But I do the same thing with Walmart. I think I might have mentioned it before, but I do their savings catcher. It's good if you're going to get consumables, because sometimes Dollar General has a lot of the same deals or a lot of the same items. You're getting like garbage bags, Glad bags or whatever. Dollar General has them a couple bucks cheaper, but I live close enough to the Walmart where I want to go in, get the Walmart, get in, get out. I can get all my shopping done in one spot. Get groceries, get consumable items for my house, and Walmart has it. And instead of me going back and forth doing coupons, I do their price saver, savings catcher, whatever it's called. I think it is savings catcher. And they give you money back. So I was up to like $50 when I went out there on the Black Friday. And I don't know if they expire. But what I do is once I get up to a certain amount, I mainly use them for video games if I'm going to buy one. And I thought, hey, I'll just put it towards the 3DS. So it's pretty cool. If you're into looking for deals like that, I recommend doing it, especially if you don't have rewards for some other grocery store or whatever, because theirs do work and you can use them on a bunch of different items. It's not like one of those rip-off reward programs. But anyway, yeah, with the tech deals, still disappointed. I'm disappointed that they have these sales going on. They're not really sales. Nothing like video game wise. I thought I might pick up Uncharted 4. I've played the other ones. I liked them. I played through the story. I don't want to play full price for the game. I know it's been out for a while. I made my choice back when it launched. I think it launched around the same time as Doom. And I got Doom instead. Wanted to play that online. And now I feel the game's been out for a while. Typically people don't play online the same game for more than a few months. So it's tough to pay full price for a game. I was hoping to get it half off, but with the craziness on Black Friday when I was there, they had tons that were picked through, and I think they were left to only the bundle. And the bundle, I already have a PlayStation 4, so there's no point in that for me. So I just picked up the 3DS when I was there. I've been watching these Cyber Monday deals, trying to figure out, hey, what would be a good gift for someone? And most of the gifts aren't worth it to me. So you go through, you're looking at it. They have the games I'm looking for. Maybe they have a game on sale. $5 off, $10 off, when you know they were just half off a few months ago. I've seen things that were like, buy 5, get $20 back. But who's going to buy like 5 or 6 of the same items? I mean, maybe video games wise if you had a bunch that you wanted on your wish list or whatever. But I haven't been buying games too much. What I do look forward to, though, has been the PlayStation Free, or the PlayStation Plus. You get 2 free games a month, or 1 free game a month, or something like that. I've mentioned that before. That's what I've been looking forward to. I just played Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Wasn't too bad. I'm going to write up a whole thing on that game soon. Still filling out more of the site. So be looking for improvements in that. I'm almost finished. Trying to get that kicked off before the new year. There are some other things that I have to get up and fix up. But that's what I'm working on. But I played through Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. I was trying to beat a game a week. Give insight on that for the podcast. I kind of slipped. I don't know if I'll be able to keep that up. Running 2 podcasts myself. But I'll see what happens. I do like using the free game. Because if you're a PlayStation owner, you can go out and get the free game. I know Xbox has the same thing. So if you're an Xbox user and they have a free game and you want to put a little segment on the podcast, let me know. Send me an email. Maybe I can get someone that can do that. And we'll play like a voicemail or something. We'll figure it out. They send me a recording. I'll add it on. Just to get another perspective. I would try to do both, but I just don't have an Xbox. But the PlayStation game, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and then the other one was like Deadly Tower of Monsters last month. I didn't get to play through that one. I'm actually past couple months I have like 1 or 2 queued up. I played through Journey, and I played through Datura, and most of the PlayStation 3 ones I haven't been looking at. But the PlayStation 4 ones, I still have Transformers, which was free. Still playing through that one. And there's another one. I'd have to look at my system to see what it is. but I have a couple in the queue that I've been playing through and trying to beat to give some feedback on. But I do like their free game system, and that makes it accessible. That way I'm not pushing games, not trying to get you to buy items. If you already have a PlayStation, most likely you pay for the online, you get free updates and free games. So that's what I'll be talking about for the price of, what is it, $50 a year or something. That you get, if it's 2 a month, you get 24 free games, even if they're like little artsy games. Like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, very slow moving and kind of brutal to play on the PlayStation 4 in my opinion. I saw, again, just like that era, I saw a ton of positive reviews. Although this game, I think, was relatively new. So it wasn't like state of the art or anything from my perspective. The story would have been cool. I know that they have VR. I looked into it for computer because I had an Oculus Rift for a while when I was doing some development stuff with that. And it probably would have been a really cool game in virtual reality because you're walking through and reliving other people's experiences. You're trying to figure out what happened in this little town. So like you walk through, look for like little events like phones, you play radios, they play back messages, and then you try to piece together a story. But on a console, it's pretty slow moving and hard to play in my opinion. I don't even know if it qualifies as a game. It's more of an experience. Because when you buy a game normally has something, winners or losers. And in this, you're just playing through a story. You followed a little light around. I strayed off the path quite a bit just to see what would happen. And the light would always appear and kind of guide me back on path. So even though it was built as a non-linear, I think I could have just played through the game in any fashion, still beat it. Like I don't think there was any difference in there. So pretty straightforward. Took a while to beat because I was going to try to explore different areas. I know it had trophies, so there are some goals in it. I looked through the trophies. It was like, listen to all the radios, blah, blah, blah. Watch some parts of the story. But just playing naturally, I think I popped 2 trophies. And one of them was like something about looking at something, and it was just by luck. Like my daughter was doing something, and it distracted me, so I didn't pause the game. I just let it sit there when I went to get her to do something, and by the time I got back, it was like I popped the trophy for like standing still for a certain amount of time. Which, I mean, yeah, if I looked at the trophies, I would have saw that. I think there was one for walking backwards for 50 seconds. So if you'd play the game just like backpedaling up a road, you'd get that trophy. And that just makes me confused. Like if the goal of the trophy system or the achievements is to like encourage you to play through the game, and just bullshit trophies like that, they don't add anything to the game. And like I said, I don't even think it was a game. It was more just like an experience. So they should bill it like that. An immersive video, some type of movie, I don't know. Because there's no winners or losers. And I think that's the definition of a game. Something with a goal. But there's just an immersive story. So for a free game, though, it wasn't too bad. The story was interesting. Some of it was kind of put together in a way that I felt like was to try to encourage people to talk about it online, maybe build hype. Like, hey, it was very vague. They might have threw like a one-liner in. Some things I missed because I tried to do some research before bringing it up on the podcast, and I noticed that on multiple sites, they had the same exact breakdown, which made me think that a developer from the game, went ahead and was given this breakdown of the story to certain people to try to encourage like talking, because it was almost word for word on multiple sites. The images were different, but it was almost word for word the same description of the game, and it kind of gave me like a little bit of a pause reading it, like, hey, this is kind of weird. When there's like 4 or 5 sites that give like the same exact review, words are slightly different, but once it gets into the story breakdown's the same. It made me think that they got it from somewhere. And then, funny, in each story, there were comments at the bottom, and there was always one guy, and it was different names or whatever, but anyone can make up a screen name on different sites. But there was always one commenter who, if someone made a negative statement about the game, like, hey, that story didn't make sense, or the game was painfully slow, there was one commenter that always put, you just must not be intelligent, or this is an intelligent game, you just didn't understand it. Which again made me feel like the publisher or someone connected to the development of the game was going around and trying to, like, I don't know, hype the game up. Because I've seen that happen before. I know people who have worked on games that have done that. Like, they went ahead to try to start like some type of flame. I know a lot of people throw that intelligent thing around. Like, hey, this is an intelligent game, or this is intelligent music. You have to be smart to understand it. To try to get people to pretend, I guess, or draw them in. Like, hey, I listened to this, or I can play this. I'm smart. I get it. Maybe I'll play it a few times. Maybe I'll buy it just to prove that I'm smart. I have it on my system. I don't know. It kind of seems like a marketing thing. You throw it out there. I mean, the game, some people don't understand it because it's a non-linear thing. And I was trying to find different pieces of the story. Like, I walked around the whole map, but it was hard because it was frustrating. You're walking miles and miles around a town and your guy moves super slow. So it's not something that makes me want to search out. Like, it didn't, when I was playing it, I didn't feel like, I should explore. Because you can't explore at that speed. And then, the worst part, they did have like a speed up. And this is only for the PlayStation 4 version, so I don't know about the other versions. But if you held in the R2 button, it would speed your guy up. But once you got near an object, so like let's say you walked near a barn, or like near a car, or anything like that, the speed burst would stop. So like if you had to walk through like an underpass or underneath a barn, you would go back to walking very, very slow. So at that point, it was very frustrating because you're like, you get into a house and the speed just drops off. Which maybe if they would have left the speed burst go no matter where you were. Because some parts you're just running across the field like, oh, hey, I ended up back here. I think I need to go through this other place. And there was one that really stood out to me. It was like a mobile home park or some summer park. But it had 2 loops. So like you went through the one loop and then the middle road kind of lined up. So I just did like the left side, walked up around, tried to hit all the rooms. Then I went down the middle and then I had to go back. And then I realized that I'd already hit all of them going that way when I redid the loop, that I just wanted to run through it. And I couldn't. It was like just taking your time. You're just walking through really slow. And I know that that's like a part of the game or whatever, the immersive experience. But if you're in VR, I understand. Because you don't want to go too fast. You will get sick. If you've never used VR, it is something that makes you like, I don't want to say ill, but after a while it kind of disorients you. And that's something that, yeah, I mean, the game would have been cool. You're going through slow. Awesome. But for a console, not good. I mean, I guess if you're looking for something slow you can do, I did the playthrough watching my daughter, so I wasn't 100% there because you're moving so slow. You can watch the story. It's not like there's story in between. Once you trigger an event, the story starts, then the story stops, and it's a lot of just walking around. So it's something that you can pick up and drop at any time. And since the stories are like non-linear, you can always go back and replay the radio or whatever. But if you have that one, I think the time might be up now to get it. I'll try to bring them up earlier in the month, but I'm a little bit behind. And with the 3DS, I'm going to try to go back through and beat the Zelda games I've never beaten and try to get caught up on those. So I'll be mixing some of that in on the podcast. Now, moving away from gaming, with the holidays approaching, you also have holiday events. So we went out and got a tree, Christmas tree. I like to cut down the tree personally and use a real tree in the house. I don't see the point in having an artificial tree. The real tree brings some smell into your house, gets you the feel of Christmas going. And it also teaches like responsibility. If you have kids, you can have them water the tree or whatever they need to do to make sure that it's up to snuff. And we went out. I don't have a saw at my current place and I didn't feel like buying one. So we went to a place and they had guys cutting the trees down and you could just pick one up. We got a real tree. I didn't want to be out there cutting a tree with a young infant out there running around. But we went to a place that had a bounce house and stuff, so that was pretty cool. had to be outside for the day. Wasn't too cold here in North Carolina. But we put that up, getting out a lot of the presents and things. We've been celebrating Krampus, which is the opposite of Santa. If you're into Santa, it's the Christmas devil is what he's billed as. So he takes the naughty children and he gives them, like, instead of like Santa giving you coal, which I don't even know if people still do that because I don't see that too much on TV. But the idea was St. Nick's Day is December 6th, I believe. And so like the eve of that, there's some other versions, Belsnickel, I think. They would bring out the coal, or for the naughty children, they would bring a switch, which is like a stick, bundle of sticks or whatever, to beat the bad children with. So he was the one that would really get people to behave. So instead of the old threat, like, hey, you better be good or Santa's not going to bring you any presents, it would be, hey, you better behave or Krampus is going to get you and he'll eat you and take you to hell. And so we use that kind of like as a fun little thing. So because we have most of our families from Pennsylvania, we're always spending time different places for the holidays, and it never feels like you're home. I mean, yeah, we come home for the Christmas week or whatever, but you're always traveling around or sometimes families visiting, and it doesn't feel like you have your own holiday. So we've gotten in the habit of celebrating Krampus night / St. Nick's is like our little family holiday. So we've been getting ready for that, as that is December 5th, I believe is Krampus, which would be when this launches. And then St. Nick's Day is the next day. I've seen some people pick up, and they do Krampus walks now, which I think are pretty cool. And what a Krampus walk is people dress up sort of like a Halloween, and they do a parade. And I think where I live here in North Carolina, near Raleigh, they do the same type of deal. I guess a lot of transplants are from here, because they had their Christmas parade the week before Thanksgiving, I think, was the big Raleigh City parade. And then another little town down here just did their parade. So we went to 2 Christmas parades. Both, well, the second one was kind of at night, so it was a little colder and we didn't last as long. My daughter had to go. But we did that one, and we also did another town had like a little downtown Christmas where they lit up a tree and they did like toy making for the kids. So we went down and did that. Pretty cool. And so along with that, I've looked into doing some live streams. Don't know if I'm going to incorporate it into the podcast. I know I've looked into doing like Twitch, maybe some gaming streams, just to get some other things out there. Maybe along with the live streams, I'll do some gaming. So like some multiplayer gaming, maybe some group games. I'm not really sure. But I'm going to be experimenting with that around the holidays, because you get a little bit more time at home. So I can work on setting up my little studio and things. So trying to get the site up, though, wrapping back to that, get the site updated. And with Christmas time, a little bit more time at home. We did most of the Christmas holiday stuff with Krampus night occurring. So that will be done from like our own perspective. Might be going out and doing other things. Most of the shopping's done, though. Gift wrapping, because we give a lot of the gifts on Krampus night. So that's it. That's when my daughter will get her 3DS that I waited in line for. But I got that set up. They took away some of the features that I don't understand. One of them, I think, like Nintendo Zone or something. There's like a little button on your home screen, but I couldn't delete it setting it up for her. It kept saying that the only thing I could do is open it, and it would just say that this service is discontinued. Then why don't you remove it from my home screen or let me delete it? Because what's the point of that? So very disappointed in Nintendo again with that, but we'll see what happens. I'll probably be breaking down the consoles soon. I think they're going to throw out the specs for the Nintendo Switch, the Project Scorpio Microsoft console, which I think is like a 4K Xbox add-on. I don't know if it's going to be backwards compatible or what the idea is there. And the PlayStation 4 Pro, which I think might be out. I think I saw it at the store. Not sure though, but I think that's just a 4K. Yeah, I think it is, because I mentioned it before. Because it is a 4K system, and I think that they were having trouble. They were blaming on televisions for not supporting it. And then the television companies were coming back and saying that they used the wrong protocol and stuff. I haven't seen the resolution on that either. So keep an eye out for that if you buy one. And now back with the holiday season also brings around playoff football, and college football bowl season. So the conference championships wrapped up last week, or this weekend, I guess, and the playoffs were announced. So in the playoffs this year, we have Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Washington. And there's been a little bit of feedback, a little bit of buzz. As a Big Ten guy, a Michigan guy here, we ended up 6th, and Penn State ended up 5th. I was a little disappointed that Penn State didn't make the playoffs because as a conference champion, they beat Ohio State. Ohio State ended up 3rd, and the committee has been jumping around the past couple years. So if you're not familiar with college football, what happens is they went ahead and they market it for years at a time. They didn't have like a true champion. So back through time, newspaper writers would pick, and they would have polls, and these polls would pick the national champion. So you would have like a view of like, and it you might have heard this before for other things, but they had a thing called East Coast bias, where a lot of the East Coast television stations would only vote for East Coast teams, and they did the same thing for awards, like the Heisman Trophy goes to the best football player. And they said that there was like an East Coast bias there, where a lot of West Coast players don't really see it because the West Coast voters don't see them, or vice versa. So then for the polls, they had the same thing. A lot of the West Coast teams you don't see on TV. So they say that their teams are underrated. They are better than what people say because they don't get the votes. There's not as much media on the West Coast to vote for these teams. They play the game super late on the East Coast. So like I've mentioned this before, the game might kick off at 10:30 on the East Coast, which means it's a 7 p.m. kickoff or 6 p.m. kickoff on the West Coast. But a lot of the East Coast games kick off at noon. So if the West Coast wanted to, with today's television, they could move their games up and kick them off at noon and play them here on the East Coast at like 3:30. But they don't. Sometimes they do. But a lot of times they don't. They could also get like a 6 p.m. kickoff, and then their game would end sometime at the beginning of the night game. It might get more people watching, but they don't do that either. And so now with the playoffs, you have teams from all these conferences. So it used to just be they would pick one, and they would have a poll, and then the college coaches would have a poll, which the coaches, they admitted themselves that they don't really pay attention. So the coaches poll wasn't really legitimate. So most people go by the AP or the media poll to list champions for all time. And the NCAA doesn't really care. They let teams list championships from any publication. And there were some that changed throughout history, some that came around after and went back and retroactively added champions. So then the NCAA recognizes, they pick which ones they think are legit. So then they give their recommendation to the school, and then the school can go ahead and claim whichever ones they want. So it's a very messed up, crazy system. And so in like 1998, I believe, so in 1997, Michigan won. They went undefeated. Nebraska went undefeated. The AP, the media, picked Michigan to win the national championship because Nebraska had to win a game late in the season by a kicked ball. And so everyone said, well, Nebraska, they got lucky. They're not as dominant as a team. Michigan is the best team. They win the national championship. Some players came out. They lobbied. They didn't play each other in the bowl system because how a bowl works is the conference has ties to like a bowl game. So like the Big Ten, they play in the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, the first bowl game against the Pac-12. So their two champions always played in a bowl game. So in 1997, Michigan played the Pac-12 champion, Washington State. And then they weren't undefeated, so it wasn't really a championship game. The second best team was Nebraska, also undefeated, and they went and played someone else in a bowl. I'm not really sure without looking it up. But they played another team, and so they wanted a system where we had two undefeated teams that they should play each other for a championship, which makes sense. But a lot of times you don't have two undefeated teams. Even this year, there's only one undefeated team. And then you get into an argument of who's the second best team, who's going to play. We've had it come back to some teams from the same conference playing. And then back to 1997 when Nebraska went undefeated as well. their players came out and they were lobbying, like, hey, coaches, vote for us. This isn't fair. We see that Michigan went undefeated. We went undefeated too. At least give us part of the championship. So then some years there were split champions. So Michigan can claim 1997, and so can Nebraska because the coaches voted for them. So 1997 had 2 champions. I think 1991 had 2 champions. 1990. So they enacted this system where it took the top 2 teams and a computer went ahead and gave them a rating, and those were the 2 teams. And there was bias towards like strength of schedule. So your team had to go out and try to find non-conference games to like beef up your computer ranking. Well, a few years ago, they switched it to this playoff system where it takes the top 4 teams. Now these teams, back before, if you were a conference champion, the computer would pretty much weight that up, and it gave you a good chance that if you were a conference champion, you were going to get in. Or if you were undefeated, a conference champion, I think you'd be in. And it depends on how many other undefeated teams there were. But there were times, I think 2004 maybe, USC, the AP didn't have to name the same champion as this bowl system. A lot of times they did because it made sense. It was called the BCS, the Bowl Computational System. I don't know what it stood for. But BCS was the championship, maybe it was a Bowl Championship Series. That might be what it is. So they went ahead and they had the computer slot these teams. If you won your conference, you got an automatic bid to one of the big bowl games, which is like the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, I think, Fiesta Bowl, and the Orange Bowl, and there might be another one. Let me see if I can see real quick. The Cotton Bowl, maybe the Citrus. I think it was 4. Sugar, Rose, Cotton. I think there might have been 5. Cotton might be the 5th one. Then the Fiesta and the Peach Bowl. I know that's crazy. Awful radio talk, me trying to guess what the bowl games were. But the system then rotated the bowls around because these bowl games paid out different amounts of money. The Rose Bowl, the first bowl, always paid the Big Ten more, and so then it helps the Big Ten conference as a whole. They get better TV deals, they get better exposure, they can pay more money to recruit, they get better recruits. The conference is bigger, the conference is better. Same with the SEC. So basically what happened over the years where there are these 2 big conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, that have the most money. They're on TV the most. They have the biggest alumni bases. They're going head to head. Over the years, the SEC then started winning. They knocked Ohio State around 2 years back to back, like in 2006, 2007 maybe. And then they went on a run where the computers always seemed to favor them. And the SEC, and then there was a hype train. SEC was always in the championship game. They won it a bunch of years in a row. Other conferences started to push back, and so they started this playoff system. But conference champions are not automatically put into the playoffs. And so now they have a lot of trouble because up till this point they have, but there's 5 major conferences and only 4 playoff spots. People complain with only 2 slots that 3 of these conferences were left out, and actually it used to be 6, but one of the conferences turned into like an all basketball conference, and so their teams got split up between the other conferences, and they were expanding for the same reason. They wanted the extra teams, extra TV money. So now you're sitting with 4 bowl spots. It expanded, and so it's been around, this is the 3rd year. So the first year, the Big 12 had 2 teams with the same record. They only have 10 teams in their conference, so they didn't have a conference championship game. Now the conference championship game was used by the committee to pick the 4 teams. So they picked the team from the Big 10, the SEC, the Pac-12, and the ACC. The Big 12 was left out. And they asked the commissioner, they said, who is your champion? And he said, let's let the committee decide. And the committee basically just laughed in their face and then left them out. And then they went ahead and said, oh, they don't have a conference championship game. So the Big 12, since that day, has been working towards expanding their season by putting a conference championship game the same week, which was this past week, the week after Thanksgiving, to take their top 2 teams, because the other conferences all have divisions. So the division winner plays the other division winner. And you get some pretty bum matchups. And then something needs to change. Because you have conference championships games that don't mean anything. And I don't know what the fix is or what they're going to do. The Big 12 had a point. They went ahead and they added this game. They had to get NCAA approval. It's taken a few years. They haven't had it yet. It starts next year. So the second year of the playoff runs around, and the 4 teams, the Big 12 gets a team in without the championship. Oklahoma gets in the playoffs. Who was the Big 10 team? Michigan State got in. Alabama got in again. I think Alabama's been the SEC's rep 3 years in a row. They won the championship. They're number 1 seed again this year. They're undefeated. And then I think Clemson got in, was the ACC. So the conference that got left out was the Pac-12. So for the first 2 years of the playoffs, the Pac-12 got left out and the Big 12 got left out. This year, the Pac-12 had a team that was relatively close, and the Big 10 almost got 2 teams in. Oklahoma lost to Ohio State, who's a Big 10 team, and so Ohio State's sitting there thinking that they already beat a conference champion. They're not even in the Big 10 championship game, that they're going to get in the playoffs. Well, they did, and they cited that they beat one of the conference champions. They beat Big 12 champions, so they should be in. They only have 1 loss. They lost to Penn State, the Big 10 champion. So Penn State should have been in ahead of Ohio State. They lost head-to-head, but Penn State scheduled Pitt in the non-conference schedule, and they lost to them. So right now it's looking like there is no incentive to playing tough games in the non-conference, because Washington played nobody, and they got in over Penn State. They played Rutgers, I think Portland State, and Idaho, which they can't even say that Rutgers was good when they scheduled them, because Rutgers has never been a world-beating program. They never sat back and thought, hey, let's schedule Rutgers. That will give us a tough game. Washington, there's no way. So there's been some backlash this year, because it's the first year where the committee's had it pretty easy the previous 2 years. Most of the conference champions had 0 or 1 loss. It was pretty cut and dry. All they had to do was pick between the conferences, and that was one of the selling points. They were like, hey, your conference didn't play tough enough teams in the non-conference. You can't schedule like lower division teams when you're going out there. But this year, it seemed like they were penalizing different conferences. Oklahoma, they didn't lose a game in conference. They lost to Ohio State and then lost to Houston. Now, Houston isn't one of the big schools, so yeah, I could see why that hurt them. But then again, Penn State loses to Pitt, who's in a big conference, had a winning record. They also beat Clemson, another playoff team. So what's to say that them winning that game doesn't put them in automatically? Because if Penn State beats Pitt, Penn State's probably in the playoffs right now. Maybe Ohio State makes it ahead of Washington and the Big 10 gets 2 teams. But right now the committee basically told Penn State, hey, you lost to Pitt, win all your games. So what's the point of scheduling tough? I mean, I don't get it. And so now, going forward, even the Big 12 commissioner shot out and was like, hey, we're adding a conference championship game. By not including Penn State, you're basically telling us that the conference championship doesn't matter. You should have put Penn State in over Ohio State, which is another argument, even cross-conference. Like, hey, you have 3 other conference winners. If you're going to say, Washington, we don't care about your non-conference schedule, you could put Penn State in just as easy. They beat Ohio State head-to-head and won their conference. So why is Ohio State getting in the playoff? Because they beat Oklahoma in non-conference? Because every other measure against Penn State, they pretty much were the same or lost at. Maybe ranked games or that second loss. Ohio State only had 1 loss, but they also played 1 fewer game because they weren't in the championship game. And I think they beat Wisconsin by 7. So like some common opponents, they might have matched up very similar. The only one that stood out, I know Michigan really took it to Penn State this year, beat them by 39. But they're not supposed to take margin of victory. But I mean, maybe they could say that. Like, hey, well, they didn't really show up this week. I know they had a lot of injuries that week, but still, they're not supposed to look at margin of victory. And somehow, I just don't think that they could put it past them. But it seems like they're kind of cherry-picking teams. Ohio State was a team that jumped a Big 12 champion the first year of the playoffs. They jumped TCU. I think TCU was ranked third. Then TCU won the last week of the season by 50 points. I think Ohio State won 59-0. So it's very similar, 50-something point victory. And Ohio State jumped them, and TCU fell 2 spots. And they said because they played one less game. Well, here you have Ohio State playing one less game than the other champions and losing head-to-head to Penn State and still not getting in. And hey, maybe Penn State doesn't stack up as well against the other playoff teams just by looking in by eye test, but they have been on a roll, and worst they could have did was put 2 Big Ten teams in. I know that would open a whole other can of worms, leaving the Pac-12 and the Big 12 both out 2 times in the first 3 years. But now you have the Big 12 sitting there, and the way the playoffs are set up is playoff participants, their conferences get more money. So if the Big 10 would have got 2 teams in, they would have had a ton of money coming into the conference. And the way the Big 10 works, and I think the SEC is the same way, not sure about the other conferences, but the big 2 conferences, they take the money and they split it amongst all their members, so that even if some of the lower teams that don't make as much revenue off T-shirts, ticket sales, any other like rights they sell like radio and things, if they don't have as big of a fan base to sell those things, they still get the bowl money because they split up. The conference affiliation is very, very powerful. So that plays into the other bowls. So it kind of pushed back some of the Big Ten slots. So now the BCS bowls from the computer age are still around. And the way those work, you have the big money from the college football playoffs. So those, you get more money. Your conference gets more money if you have a team make that. Then you have the BCS bowls, which are the old system where automatic conference guys got in. You get a big chunk of money from the TV deal. And then the top 2 would play in the national championship game. So the playoffs are separate of that. I think you get more money if you play in the national championship game too. So it's very, very important for conferences to pull for their own teams. And I know some fans will be like, no, I'm not pulling for someone in my own conference. They're rivals, blah, 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 blah. But no, if you want your team to be able to compete, your conference has to be able to make it to these big games, because then they get more money. More money gets kicked back to the school. They can spend the money going around and doing extra things like increasing weight room, increasing facilities. I know like Michigan got flack because their coach Harbaugh, he was flying around to different camps teaching kids, but you can't do that unless you have extra money laying around. Some schools can't even barely break even. I think Maryland's still in debt. So the playoffs, having 2 teams in the playoffs would have been a huge deal for the Big Ten. That money would have been kicked back, and maybe Maryland, they would have made their money back from jumping from the ACC to the Big Ten. And that was the reason behind some of these schools moving conferences. And so now, with each 4 different teams or 4 different conferences getting in the playoffs, those extra teams slot down to the BCS bowls, which also pay much more money. So then you have the matchup. The 2 playoff matchups are Alabama and Washington, big money game, and Clemson and Ohio State, big money game. Then you have the other big money game. So the Orange Bowl, the first big money game is between Florida State and Michigan. So that means the ACC and the Big Ten get another cut of money. It's a little bit less than the playoffs, but you're still getting big money for the conference. Then you go down to the Cotton Bowl. I think that's another one. And you have Wisconsin and Western Michigan. So that's another Big Ten team getting extra money. Then the Rose Bowl, Penn State and USC. Yet another Big Ten team getting money, extra money. So the Big Ten is going to make a ton of money off the bowl season this year. Now, will their teams win? I don't know. Will it help their record? Probably not. So then historically what's happened is the Big Ten has all these teams in these big money bowls. So like Wisconsin is the 4th best team in the Big Ten. they go ahead and they play the best non-power conference team. So they could have a favorable matchup, but the team they're playing is undefeated. So maybe they lose that game. The rest of them, Penn State's, the number one in the Big Ten. They should never have been jumped. But so they have a favorable matchup. They're playing the third team in the Pac-12. Michigan's the third best Big Ten team. We're playing Florida State, who's probably, I think, the way they ended up ranked the second best team in the ACC. And then it gets worse from that. So like the fifth Big Ten team, they might be playing the third best team in the ACC or the second or third best team in the SEC. So they're always at a disadvantage. So people who go ahead and point out bowl records, they're not telling the whole story. You have to look up matchups and what position they're slotted. Now, if you want to be the best conference, if you want to be one of the big money-making conferences, you have to play the games and you have to compete. People have to want to watch them. And so right now, there are two conferences out there that make the most money, the SEC and the Big Ten, and both of them have won a championship in the playoffs. Ohio State won it for the Big Ten the first year the playoff occurred, and Alabama won it last year, the second year the playoff occurred. Those two teams are back in it. That might have given Ohio State the benefit of the doubt, like, hey, you ran the table 2 years ago. That might give you an edge. I don't know. Does prestige play a factor? Are some of these big money teams going to go ahead and get the nod in the playoffs over other teams that make the playoffs from their same conference? I don't know. Like a team makes the conference championship. They're not a normal power team. Are they going to get jumped again by someone else who they beat head-to-head? Because that's the precedent they're setting. So now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that they're eventually going to have to expand this to 8 teams. They might already have this in the works. I don't know. I don't know how many of these Power Bowls they're going to have. There are some that might be close. Like there's an Outback Bowl on January 2nd. That features Florida and Iowa. Iowa, another Big Ten team. Actually, Iowa might be like the 5th or 6th team, and they're playing Florida, who's the second SEC team. So if you want to see a discrepancy right there about these matchups, there you go. You have it right there. Florida was in the SEC championship game. Iowa was nowhere close. I think they were like 8-4. So there you go. The other one that might be close to the same amount of payout is the Citrus Bowl. On the 31st, you have Louisville and LSU, another SEC team, and an ACC team. And then there's another one that's on the 31st as well. That's the Tax Slayer Bowl. And it's Georgia Tech and Kentucky. So the ACC and the SEC. So if you notice from these matchups, just looking down through, have I seen a Big 12 team? So it's looking like in the future, the Big 12, I don't even remember. I guess there's one Pac-12 plus the playoffs. Some of these conferences aren't going to really be able to pick up. I guess the Sugar Bowl might be a big bowl game. That's Auburn at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I might have missed that earlier from the Big Bowl payouts. Oklahoma is the Big 12 champion, and Auburn is an SEC team. I don't even know what they finished, 3rd or 4th. So there, the SEC's in a disadvantage because they're one of the big 2 conferences out there. And so you're looking at it from money-wise, and you're saying, how are these other conferences going to keep up? And I don't think they are. I think you're either going to see 4 conferences, this 4-conference playoff, or 14 playoff is going to continue, and you're going to see the other conferences fold into 4 conferences, and you're going to have 4 power conferences, and it's going to be changed so that the conference champions are going to play in the playoff. And then that's it. And then your conference is going to be matched up from prestige from that. And then the second and third teams are going to be slotted in these bowls. Because now you have losing teams playing in bowl games. If your team has like a losing record, you can apply to get granted permission to participate in a bowl game. And as long as your like graduation rate is up there, boom, they let you in. So it's not a big deal. It's not hard to get into. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to keep up going because a lot of these bowls end up losing money. It's not like the big ones make a ton of money because everyone watches them, but these lower bowls, not too many people watch. Not too many people are going to sit around and watch Boston College play Maryland on December 26th at 2:30 p.m. There's some other ones that are random, like BYU and Wyoming. or Western Kentucky and Memphis. Yeah, it makes sense to reward the kids. They go and they play, but there's way too many bowls, and they should change the record from just having, even losing records now. I think this mainstay is 6-6, but what they should do is if these bowls are trying to make money, they're putting it out there. If there's not enough teams, they can bid for it, and then the NCAA can take the highest bid or whatever they need to do, and then the money should go towards like scholarship fund or something, which I'm sure the NCAA keeps and gives them salaries to themselves. But they should go ahead, and if they're going to take bids, and if they don't have enough teams for the bowl bids, then tell them, hey, save that money next year, make a higher bid, or come back and see what happens. But some of these, like, you're having like random bowl games in Mobile, Alabama, the Boise, Idaho Bowl, the Potato Bowl in Boise, Idaho, which is that a reward for the kids going up there in the winter? I don't know. Actually, I don't even know what the weather is. That's just something the media always perpetrates. Like, hey, this should be a reward for the kids. They should want to go to Florida, or they should want to go to out to California. Like, there's one in Detroit, Michigan. They always say, actually, that's where Boston College and Maryland are playing, in Detroit, Michigan. Which, hey, that helps tourism, I guess. Two teams that are kind of close. I mean, I would rather see, just looking at the teams matched up in bowl games, I think I'd rather see Miami of Ohio and Detroit, just because then their fans can drive up to the game. It's not that far. And maybe Eastern Michigan's in one, or wherever. Some of these bowl games, they should be played at home stadiums. Like Michigan has the highest attendance or seating capacity in the college ranks, but if they would go ahead and move a bowl somewhere else to a smaller stadium, they're going to lose out on money, but no one wants to go up north and play over the holidays. And I can see that. But that's the bowl breakdown for this year. Some surprise. I still think that they're going to go ahead and either, if there's going to stay 5 conferences, they're going to expand to 8 teams. The 8 teams let all big 5 conferences automatically get in. They do have every other conference. They usually take the highest unranked or the highest ranked team, which is Western Michigan this year. That's why they're playing Wisconsin. So they'll do the same thing in the future. They'll have the highest ranked team go ahead and make it for their 6th, so that all the other conferences, they get a chance at an automatic bid, which is fair. And then that way the number 1 seed plays them. And so it should be an advantage to the number 1 seed. They're playing a lower conference. They should win even if the team's undefeated. That should be an advantage for the number 1 seed. So if you do get the most votes, whatever, they should bring back the computers. I think the computers have been very close on the rankings for the college football playoff, but I mean, I don't understand why they have people picking who they want to watch. It seems like they can always just go ahead and pick the teams that's going to make the most money. But then you go ahead and the last 2 spots in the 18 playoff are going to be at-large bids. So then, yeah, you have an Ohio State team that slips up against Penn State. Maybe they are better. They can still get in. Michigan would have been close this year. I think USC's been coming up. That's the complaint, though, is that, hey, at this point, like this year is a weird year. You have teams with more losses because they're playing these tougher schedules, thinking they have to play them to get into playoffs. USC played Alabama. Now they have 3 losses. Did they really deserve to get in to the playoffs with 3 losses? I say yeah, because now if you go ahead and you count losses and say, hey, one too many losses, they're not going to schedule Alabama anymore. That was an automatic loss. I think they lost by 50 to start the year. A young team to start the year against the reigning champs, that's a great game for television. Well, it was if it would have been close. But why would they schedule that if it's going to hurt them in the way to the playoffs? So they need to decide what they want. Do they want paper champions where they're playing all these paper Tigers? They're just ripping through Idaho, Portland State like Washington did, Rutgers, who Michigan beat 78-0. And I know they're in the Big Ten, but they're not caught up yet. They came from a lower division, joined the Big Ten. They're just starting to get the Big Ten money in. They're a few years away from competing. So when Washington scheduled them, I don't even think they were in the Big Ten because these games are made well in advance, a few years out. So when they made that schedule, there's no way that they were already in the Big Ten or in the higher division. So they went ahead and scheduled that before that happened. And that's the wrap up. Our fantasy football playoffs started. I know fantasy kind of boring, hearing someone talk about their team, but I have some gripes on that, on the way the NFL started to change things around. Maybe I'll bring that up next week. Maybe I'll write about it. I don't know. But I don't like these bye weeks. There's a bye week this week, and I don't think there was one in the past. I think bye weeks are already over. I'll have to do some research. But it's really messing up our league because playoffs are starting and we have people on bye. And then they have the obligatory last 2 weeks of the season, which we don't play in fantasy because teams rest their players once they're already in the playoffs. And you're going to see that more and more. But that's what this new month is bringing. So we'll have some exciting things going down. I'll be updating the site. Let me know. Reach out if you have any ideas. You want to participate. Give me a shout out. I'm getting some more contact forms and stuff up, trying to fix the site up. So thank you for listening. You've been listening to Socially Numb with Richie Leahy.